Hey guys, welcome back to the Husband Coaching Series. My name is Warren Maynard. Joined with me today is Coach Matt Wimmer, and we are ready to dive into our second session, Date Your Wife. In today's session, we will be exploring the importance of intentionality in maintaining romance and passion in our marriages, Proverbs 5, and learning best practices for engaging our wives on a consistent basis. So grab your workbook and grab your playbook and let's talk about dating our wives. Coach, are you ready to get into it?
I'm ready. Here we go.
All right, here we go. So let's think about the early days. Way back in the day. You've been married for 28 years. I've been married for almost 26 years. So I've got to go back to college. You've got to go back to college. But think about those early days in your dating relationship with your wife. What made the dating fun and exciting and appealing?
Well, this is a little bit convicting because as I've been thinking about this, I was a lot more creative. I was thinking my first date, I took her out to dinner on Lake Union. And we went and saw a movie. Date number 2, I took her to a magic show. Date number 3 was down on the Montlake Cut, having a nice, dessert and watching the boats pass. And I was thinking, wow, that sure is a whole lot more creative than what I've been doing lately. So very convicting.
Absolutely, because you were thinking about it. You were intentional. You were coming up with ideas. I know when I first started dating my wife, I was asking buddies for ideas. Right. I was planning it out. I was getting creative. I was writing poems. I was taking pictures. I was saving little pieces of, something from a restaurant and then talking about it later, making mental notes of everything. And so all of those things kind of really contributed to the whole experience of dating who was my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife, dating in a way that really brought a lot of joy, excitement, anticipation, and enthusiasm. And all of those things are beautiful parts of every relationship. But as it happens so often, we get married and then we get into our careers, we start having kids, life gets busy. We have more pressures, more responsibilities. And as I've experienced at times in my marriage over the last 25 plus years, maybe you as well, but certainly many men that I talk to, there can be seasons where it feels like we're really just kind of white knuckling it through the year, and we're really more co-managers of an organization than we are lovers, friends, and a couple that's pursuing one another. So really today, what we want to talk about and what I want to get your insight, Coach, is how do we maintain a level of enthusiasm and creativity and intentionality in the area of dating our wives?
I think the key word is romance. And, when we go back to what does, a woman need? So back to the core needs, certainly companionship is a huge piece to that. I think for us, as silly as this sounds, companionship, it's probably more recreational. But for a woman's need, it's more relational. And I have never met a woman who does not have a desire to be, romanced. And it's the shows on TV, that attract, women as far as that deal with romance. They even like hearing romance stories from girlfriends or even, from their children, as they get into those teenage years. So I think it's always having a keen eye of, am I still being that romantic that I was way back at the beginning of our relationship? So.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I love that balance between what you said, recreational and relational.
Yeah.
Because, I love, say, getting out in the backyard and playing a game of cornhole, right? It's fun.
Not so romantic, but
it's
yes,
not
actually
really
fun.
romantic, but at the same time, if my wife and I play a game of cornhole together, maybe not by ourselves on a date, but in some social setting, am I thinking about the relational aspect of that in a way that, makes her feel loved and seen and appreciated? And then vice versa, we as men, we don't typically want to just say, sit down on the couch and look at our wives in the eyes and say, I want to tell you how I'm feeling and you tell me how you're feeling.
Right.
That's not how we really relate.
No.
So finding ways to invite our wives into some of those experiences where we can do both. Matt, I love that. And that really kind of reminds me of a couple of verses from the Old Testament that, believe it or not, I think have a lot to do with this conversation of dating your wife. And so Proverbs says, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. And then Ecclesiastes says, enjoy life with the woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. For this is your reward in life and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. And so, Matt, there are these words that we read like blessed, rejoice, enjoy, and reward. And all that sounds pretty good to me. Do you have any special time that you try to set aside with your wife that feels like reward, blessing, rejoicing, and enjoyment?
Yeah, early on in our marriage, we set aside Wednesday nights, as a date night. And I remember, there was a little bit of I wouldn't say disagreement, but there was certainly some conversation around, because we didn't have a whole lot of obligations as it related to children, certainly, where, well, almost every night is a date night. Why are we making this specific night? But we both agreed that separating one night a week was important for the relationship. And if we were invited to different gatherings or on that night, we would just simply say, sorry, it's our date night. And soon friends and family began to recognize, they'd start by saying, hey, how about you come over Wednesday? Oh, wait a minute, that's your date night. How about Thursday night or Friday night? So we tried our best to continue that even when the children were young. Evenings became a little bit more challenging, so we switched to lunch, so a date lunch for a season. We've now returned back to Wednesday night date nights. And so again, in session one, you talked about, the couple that prays together stays together. And I think we could add to that the couple that plays together stays together. And again, keeping that romance that we had in those early years, I think is so critical as men. That it is important to ask our buddies for ideas, like you mentioned, and be thinking of creative ways that we can romance her. However, that being said, it's not always going to be all that romantic, and sometimes she's just not going to feel like doing anything. And I think it's okay. Even just this past Wednesday, Cindy didn't feel like doing anything.
Right.
So she likes coffee. So I just said, well, how about I take you to get a cup of coffee? Let's just get out of the house, cup of coffee. So that's what we did. And then we ended up actually taking a walk in the park, a park that we hadn't frequented in a very long time. And it ended up being a really fun evening. Now, not one of our top 10 dates of all time, but afterwards she said, thank you so much for just kind of getting me going, just kind of, shaking off, just again, a very tiring day and having fun together. So.
I love that. And I agree. I think about our marriage, and we've always tried to designate a time and a place that we would be able to experience that date time on a regular basis. If not weekly, than at least a couple times a month. And, it changes depending on the season of life that you're in. When the kids are at home, well, then you got to do it in the evening or on the weekend. But when the kids are at school, man, it sure is nice to have the home all by yourself, and to be able to say, okay, let's go do this thing together, and then we can come back to the house and be together, which is pretty phenomenal. And so I love that you talked about, hey, there are days where we say we're going to really be intentional and we're going to plan this thing out. And I know for me and for my wife, she really appreciates it when I put thought and effort and preparation into getting ready for the date, and letting her know that I value this enough that I've, made the arrangements for this to happen. But then also that flexibility to ask the question, what do you need? Or what do we need right now? And maybe that what we need right now is not some extravaganza. Right. But it's really just, hey, let's, like you said, go for a walk and share what's going on. And you're right. Some of those just simple walking dates together can be some of the most profoundly influential times in our marriage. So wonderful stuff. I want to give each of you guys a growth challenge. One way that you can continue to grow closer to your wife is to find something that she is interested in and learn more about it. If possible, join her in that interest. Even if it's something that never becomes an interest for you, your interest in her will be greatly appreciated. So, my wife and I are very different, which we talked about in a previous session. She's much more into music and arts. I'm more into sports and sports, and so we don't naturally always want to watch the same thing, do the same thing, attend the same events. But I've found that it's important for me to, as much as I can, lean into her loves so that she sees the love that I have for her. So Coach, let's talk some best practices. What are some dates that you've had with your wife that have been a home run? Maybe just kind of give us like some bullet point ideas for some of the guys at home.
I think that's great advice to, what are those things that she's most interested in? And I think, my bride is a social person. So she fuels being with other people. And so I think anything that we can do with others is actually going to really, provide her just a lot of fulfillment. So whether that's going out to dinner, perhaps with another couple, or going to see a movie with another couple, and then maybe dessert afterward to discuss the movie, or getting together to play games, perhaps going to a concert. Those are things that she really, really enjoys. So.
Yeah, and so understanding that fuels her fire gives you, greater motivation to say, okay, how can I keep those fires hot? Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so for other men, it might be that your wife is not fueled by kind of an extrovert mentality. Maybe they're like, I really need for just the two of us to be together, or for us to unplug in order for me to recharge. So those are great things for us to think about. Are there any common themes that you have noticed in your most enjoyable dates? Any nugget that you can take away from those dates that you can incorporate into future dates?
Well, when I think of the nuggets, I think, again, you're exactly right. What does my wife need? And, I think relationship is a huge component to that. So one of the things that Cindy and I like to talk a lot about is personalities, as you referenced. And there is, is my wife introverted? Is my wife extroverted? And is relationship very, very important, or is it more spontaneous activities? So I think the nuggets would be, if I can best understand her personality, her unique social style, and it might even be just sitting in a quiet place reading a book. We observed an older couple not too long ago that were just sitting in a little alcove, both of them reading books. So they weren't on their phones; they were just reading books together. And you could tell just by the limited exchange we had that they were more on the introversion side of the social style. So I think that's the nugget, would be, is understanding her unique personality, and recognizing that she's wired differently than I am in that personality, and then just being very appreciative of that, and creating, we'll call it opportunities, dates, along with her likes that are really going to fuel her. So.
Yeah. So Matt, one of the things that we really value in Impact Players is authenticity. And let's get real for just a minute. This is not a utopia. We're not speaking in just pure flowery theoretical terms. There are going to be hurdles and obstacles that come with trying to consistently date your wife. All kinds of things that come up that are going to present an opportunity or an obstacle that might keep you from keeping this consistent. What are some of those hurdles or those obstacles that you've seen, and how have you and Cindy tried to navigate that together?
I mean, no question, I think work is a major hurdle. I mean, as men, we're striving, we're trying to gain appreciation, or just, for that matter, just provide. So I think work is probably the major hurdle. In raising a family, our children are going to have their different challenges, and roadblocks that they're going to face growing up, and we're only as happy as our happiest child. Those are things that certainly impact. In-laws are still in the picture. That can sometimes create different, if there's maybe a lack of communication, expectations. So those certainly are hurdles that come to mind right away. So finances is obviously often an issue, that there's never enough money for the month. And especially if our wives work, then she's bringing home all those things that happen maybe during a given day. And then somehow, oftentimes we can put this unrealistic expectation that she's still supposed to put on that old-fashioned apron in the kitchen and provide the dinner and, put the kids down for bed, and that we don't have to participate in that. So those are all huge hurdles.
Absolutely. And I can identify with every single one of those things. I think about so many times over the years in our marriage where we find our schedules getting so overwhelmed with just responsibilities, duties, many of them good stuff, but just literally swallow up any remaining time that we have for one another. I know I've talked to several couples over the years that have said, we can't afford a babysitter, or we can't find a babysitter, those kind of things. But I think at the end of the day, we look at what are the things that we truly prioritize and value, and we'll make time and we'll find the money, we'll find a way to do it. Maybe if you can't find the babysitter, then it's finding a way to have a little date night after the kids go to sleep at home. If you don't have money, then go for that walk in the park and be creative, play games, do different things. But let's go ahead and just say, as men, that we're not going to allow the excuses to become some sort of a get out of our responsibility pass. You know, that we're going to really pursue this because that's what impact players do. They're intentional. They strive after all these things. So Matt, thank you so much. This is some great stuff. Thank you guys for joining us for this session. I want to extend a big thank you to Coach Matt for your wisdom. Dating your wife needs to be a priority in your marriage. And even though it takes discipline, it should be something that you and your spouse get excited about as you continue to study this week. Don't forget to use the ABC Bible study method to dive deeper into Proverbs chapter 5 and identify your best verse. And don't forget to memorize this week's scripture memory verse, Ecclesiastes 9:9a. Enjoy life with the woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. Let's continue investing in our marriages and strengthening the bond with our wives. We will see you guys next time.